Into Saturday Night Blues on CBC Radio. I'm Holger Petersen, here with some very special guests to perform some live music for us. Suzie Vinnick and Rick Fiennes.
Save me for later like a child saves chocolate kisses. Save me for later like some flowers for a missus. Like a smoker keeps a cigarette in his pocket. And sweethearts keep photos in a locket. They say cooking it slow brings out the flavor, darling, save me for later. Save me for later like an after midnight playlist. Rock me tonight, I'll give you fever, we'll make it shameless. Like a queen bee is sharing all her honey. A millionaire spending all his money. They say cooking it slow brings out the flavor, darling, save me for later. Whoa, something put aside always seems a little sweeter. A secret desire that gets a little stronger. Your will to resist it gets weaker and weaker as you think about it. Longer and longer, yeah, yeah, save me for later like a taste of luxury, like a vintage bottle of Merlot or risotto con grana padano. They say cooking it slow brings out the flavor, darling, save me for later. They say cooking it slow brings out the flavor, yeah. Cooking it slow brings out the flavor, yeah. Cooking it slow brings out the flavor, darling, save me for
Very nice. Suzie Vinnick, guitar and vocals, and Rick Fiennes playing some beautiful slide on that tune, Save Me for Later. And that's taken from the new Suzie Vinnick recording called Me and Maybelle. I didn't know you could speak Italian.
No. Oh, it's just a good Italian dish. Found it online and got coached by an Italian singer-songwriter friend how to say it. So.
Well, it's a wonderful recording, and it's especially nice for your fans of acoustic music to have a Suzie Vinnick acoustic album. You've done a lot of other things in the past and recorded in another different way in many cases. It's called Me and Maybelle. Where did that title come from?
I play a little. My regular guitar is a little Larrivee parlor guitar made of maple and spruce, and I started nicknaming my guitar Mabel, just kind of a play on words with the maple. So yeah, and the album is tunes. There's 14 songs, and most of them are just myself and the guitar, and then a few have some special guests like Rick on it, and so. Yeah, that's
All
where that
kinds
came
of
from.
special guests.
You betcha.
Tony D is on it.
You
Chris
betcha.
Whiteley's on it. Danny Greenspoon. Some wonderful
Oh, Danny
people.
produced, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Rolly Platt's our harmonica player. So, with that harmonica player, yeah.
Would you mind going back a little bit? And, I've always thought it was great that you were from the prairies and specifically from Saskatchewan. Did you grow up in Saskatchewan and were you involved in the music scene before you went to Toronto?
Yeah, I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and as a teenager, I'd go to Buds on Broadway, to the blues jams every Saturday, and it was really my first introduction to blues music. It was the only place I could go as a teenager and get up on stage because I was underage, right? So every Saturday I'd go and play a few songs, and my friends would teach me more blues songs, and the owners were so great because they'd let me come in at night and hear the bands, which was so exciting as an aspiring musician to get to come in and hear all these amazing bands from Canada, across Canada, and from the States, and all these blues bands. So it was my education is Buds on Broadway in Saskatoon. And then I met Tony D in Saskatoon when I was around 20. He lived there briefly, and we played some music together. We first played with Back Alley John. Back Alley had hired myself and to play bass, and Tony to play guitar. And then Tony and I ended up doing a little trio for about 6 or 8 months, and then he went back to Ottawa. So
Tony
yeah.
D, of course,
A monkey.
wonderful, guitar player.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
band leader, solo recording artist from Ottawa, who's in Monkey Junk, of
Yeah.
course, as you mentioned, these days, and doing very, very well. Rick, when did the two of you start to work together, and how did that happen?
Well, it was about 18 years ago, and I was in Ottawa playing a gig with Jackson Delta. And when I was in Ottawa, I was stopped by to visit my friend Chopper McKinnon. And when I went to see him, he said, you don't want to be here. You want to be a couple of doors down. And there's a bass player there you need to hear. So I went in, and Back Alley John was playing with Tony D on the guitar and Suzie Vinnick on the bass. And I was just so impressed with hearing a woman playing the bass so aggressively. And then she stepped up to the microphone to sing, and I was sold. So I found myself at the side of the stage saying, how do we play some music together? And the very next day we went over to Susie's place and we jammed throughout the afternoon, and then got on the phone and booked a gig that very afternoon.
That's great.
Very fast.
It's been a long association now, hasn't it? Over quite a few recordings and tours and all kinds of activity. How long have you been playing together?
Well, it is 18 years.
18
Yeah,
years.
it'll be
18
18, I
years.
guess, in June. We met in June of 1993 or something like that. So, yeah. So from, June of this year, we'll officially be 18.
I love both of you as songwriters, and I've been fans of your work for a long time. And the next song that you're going to do is actually an international award-winning song. And we were talking about this earlier. Both of you have actually won awards from this competition in a few cases now.
Yeah, it's I guess Rick won. It's the International Songwriting Competition, which is based in Nashville, Tennessee, and people from all over the world can submit their songs to the different categories. And so, why don't you talk about Riley a little bit?
Well, I entered the competition because I heard that B.B. King was going to be one of the judges, and I thought if I could make it to the finalists, then B.B. King would actually have to listen to one of my songs, and I thought that was good enough reason right there. So I entered, and sure enough, Riley Wants His Life Back won first place in it.
And Riley, of course, being B.B. King's first name.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Good thinking there.
Yeah, and also I knew that he liked the trios of the 1940s, and that was some of the music that he liked to listen to, too. So I thought this is a good match on many levels, and because it's styled after that kind of music.
And Suzie, tell me about your winning this competition.
Yeah, I've won at first place twice. I co-wrote a song with David Leask, who's and Liz Tansey, who are both Toronto area songwriters, and we wrote it actually in a pub in Nashville. The song called "The Honey I Want," and submitted it. And I had decided I guess it was 2005, to do a little blues pilgrimage for a couple of weeks down into Mississippi, and when I was heading back to Canada, I was checking messages and found out that we won. I was like on the highway, I think, with my headset on, and found out we'd won the first place in the contest. So it was kind of neat to be down there and finding out that we won the first place. And then I also wrote a song with Dan Kershaw in, well, that was actually early 2003, but decided to submit the version that the Marigolds recorded of the song called Sometimes I Think I Can Fly. And we won first place again. So
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Would you do
thanks.
that song for us, please?
Would love to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dearly beloved, I'm writing you 'cause I feel so far away. Last night when I checked you a line your bed, when I left you had nothing to say. And sometimes the bottle's half empty, and sometimes I drink till it's dry. And sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes, and sometimes I think I can fly. I thought I could hide in the I-95, in the chatter of drunks in this bar, where the work comes in shifts and the customers drift, and our fortunes not caught in the stars. And sometimes the bottle's half empty, and sometimes I drink till it's dry. And sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes, and sometimes I think I can fly. Oh, oh, oh. Now the sun's down low on the city, and it goes where you're living to make you behave. Up here on the roof, oh, it feels like we're through. And on the street, I call out your name, I call your name. Oh, and sometimes the bottle's half empty, and sometimes I drink till it's dry. Sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes, and sometimes I think I can fly. Oh, and sometimes the bottle's half empty. Sometimes I drink till it's dry. Sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes, and sometimes I think I can fly. Sometimes I think I can fly, and sometimes I think I can fly.
Suzie Vinnick and Rick Fiennes on Saturday Night Blues. I'm Holger Petersen. You're listening to Saturday Night Blues on CBC Radio 1 and 2. I know that both of you have been involved in educating people and blues in the schools and working, at the Hornby Island music camps over the years. And just curious, If there's somebody that really hasn't become that familiar with the blues, Suzie, where do you start if you want to familiarize them and kind of head them in the right direction?
I guess in a classroom situation, if I'm sitting with someone, well, what I do with my vocal blues workshops is I have a whole catalog of songs that I give them like a little lyric booklet, and we'll sing a whole bunch of different styles of blues and some gospel, and just give them a taste of all the different flavors that the blues beholds, I guess, and I'll also tell stories about the singers sometimes that sing the songs and the people that wrote the songs, just to give people some background on the music and yeah.
Who are the kind of touchstone artists for you that you think people will kind of pick up on?
Well, the first female blues singer that I really heard that I got was Coco Taylor. And I loved her singing just because she's kind of aggressive, a little bit aggressive and funky. And I was an aspiring, like a bass player, so I love her music. Bonnie Raitt, I mean, is an amazing singer that I love, and her guitar playing too. She's got her own voice, in more ways than one, and as a songwriter. Love Howlin' Wolf. That aggressiveness. Stevie Ray Vaughan was someone I listened to in my really early teens and tried to learn his guitar stylings from my Guitar from the Practicing Musician magazine. I tried Pride and Joy over and over. Yeah, so those are a few of my a few of my early influences, I guess, and people who I still love listening to. There's a few there.
Rick, how about you when you're introducing blues to newcomers? Where do you start?
Well, I always start with a quick overview history and trying to take people through from field hollers and work songs through the rhythms of the blues, through the formation of the 12-bar blues pattern, and then from there, start showing people how 12-bar blues might have started off, with that rhythm like this, the shuffle rhythm, and how those rhythms would get changed around, and still following the same 12-bar pattern. How Hank Williams would play 12-bar blues as country music, and still follow that same 12-bar blues. Talk about swing music. How it's following that same pattern, and take the thing all the way through with, talking about how slide guitar was developed, and bring it on up into Chicago, and how Muddy Waters put together a band with 2 electric guitars, bass, and drums, and changed the world and created a format that's lasted to this day. And in the process, people start hearing how blues has influenced everything that they listen to.
I can't think of another 2-minute explanation on the blues that's any better than that. That's perfect.
Well, I usually take an hour, but I figured we didn't have that.
And who would be some of those touchstone artists that you would like to direct people to?
Well, I guess because I'm usually walking into, when I'm talking about doing this sort of thing, I'm talking about going into an elementary school. So really, I bring them up through this history, and then by the time they're recognizing anybody, it'd be Elvis. And and I asked them if they recognized Chuck Berry, and you'd be surprised, Holger. You go into a gym full of kids, and there might be 600 kids, and you ask them to put up their hand if they've heard of Chuck Berry, and 2 or 3 hands go up. And then I say, well, put up your hand if you've heard this before. And then suddenly, all the hands are up, and then they realize, that's Chuck Berry.
Great. Suzie, I know that you've done the Women's Blues Review in Toronto for many years, and Saturday Night Blues is proud to be a sponsor of that event. We record it every year, and we broadcast it every year.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a wonderful event, and we certainly like to recommend that people do check it out every October, November. You've played bass, and you've been the band leader for that as well, I believe.
Yeah, and guitar as well too. I've been a guitar player as well. I started on bass, so I think in '95 or '96, and played it many years. And then Lily Saz was the music director for a good 10, 11 years. I don't even know the numbers anymore. Isn't that terrible? And then I think I did the leading for a year or two. Last year I missed out because I was on tour. So Donna Grantis has taken over the reins as the music director of the band and did a great job from what I heard last year. So it's been really a really fun band to get to be a part of. I've learned so much and over the years, and have gotten to work with so many incredible singers as our guests. So
I know you've also sung on other people's recordings and contributed to other people's recordings. Can you tell me some of those people that you've worked with?
Well, I was going through some old papers when I was back home in Toronto, cleaning up and purging, and I found some lyrics to Mama, I think is the name of the song that David Wilcox recorded. I was trying to remember, I guess that was in 2000 that I got to do some backups on David's album, which was a real treat. And of course, I've been on, I guess, Rick's records and a couple of Rick's. There's Live at the Harvest and Arcadia. I'm just trying to think. But I'm trying to think of blues-oriented. I was on a Dutch Mason album many years ago, too, when I lived in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think of who I've sang on lately. It's all a blur. Isn't that terrible? Lots going on, I guess.
Sure. Rick, I know that I first became familiar with your work through Jackson Delta, and always thought that was such a great story. I believe Peterborough, Ontario?
Peterborough, that's right. Yeah.
Right? A band out of Peterborough, Ontario, goes down to Memphis, records at Sun Studios, releases some great material of, wonderful Delta blues and original material by yourself and members of the band. And that was kind of what kickstarted your career, I believe. And you've done quite a few solo records since then, too, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, and I guess it's in total now with the one I've done with Suzie and with Jackson Delta. It's been 11 of them now over the years, and we just played another gig as Jackson Delta just recently. We tend to do one or two a year, and that's a lot of fun. We stay good friends, and Alan Black, of course, has just released a fantastic new album on his own.
Great. Would you do one more song for us tonight, please?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
We're going to do a song. Rick, why don't you talk about it? Because you started it, my dear.
This is a song I was writing for my wife, and I was just stuck on it. I didn't have everything finished, and I needed some help, and called up Suzie, and she came over and helped me out with this, and came up with the intro that ends up being sort of the solo part in the middle as well, musically, and then lyrically she came up with my favorite line for the whole song, which is a million yellow lines down that endless road, and anyone who's spent some time on the road knows what that feels like. This is called We've Got a Love Like That. 1, 2, 3. Well, when the days get short and the nights get long, when the autumn leaves have come and gone, well, she shines for me just like the sun. We've got a love like that.
If you felt the sun in your face, the wind in your back, like a kid put candies on a railroad track, can't think of one thing you lack. We got a love like that.
Oh, we got a love like that. Whoa, whoa, we got a love like that. Oh, we got a love like that. We got a love like that. When I'm a long way from home with a long way to go, a million yellow lines down that endless road, I know we've got a good thing. It's a good thing to know we got a love like that. Oh, we got a love like that. Whoa, whoa, we got a love like that. Oh, we got a love like that. We got a love like that. Truer words than when true love sets you free, and we got a love like that. We got a love like that. Whoa, whoa, we got a love like that. We got a love like that. Whoa, whoa, we got a love like that. We got a love like that. Whoa, whoa, we got a love like that. We got a love like that. We got a love like that.
Great. Thank you so much. That was great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Holger.
Thanks, everybody.